Malin BJÖRK, you have been initiating a conference here at the European Parliament in Strasbourg on AFROPHOBIA. Is that really that necessary?
Yes, in my view, it is really necessary. I think there are millions of people living in Europeans that are facing Afrophobia on a daily basis. It goes everything from stereotyping to hate crimes and violence. So I think it's time that we start to face European, also colonial and racist past, and especially this particular form of racism that is Afrophobia. I speak about black Europeans or black people living in Europe, and I think...
But you call it Afrophobia.
Afrophobia, yeah. It is racism directed against black people. So, yeah. And this for me, it's also, I think there are different forms of racism and they need to be deconstructed in different ways. I mean, Afrophobia, racism against black people is very rooted in Europe's colonial past, slave trade, etc. We need to learn more, and we do that with the help of colleagues that have fought for decades for the rights of black people in Europe.
And one of them is standing here. Michel Esajas, you are from the Netherlands.
That's correct.
In Netherlands there is a tradition, the 7th of December.
The 5th of December.
That Santa Claus is coming, having or being followed by a black man who is supposed to be the bad side. Is that the reason why you are having a, could we call it a propaganda saying that get rid of this Black Pete?
Well, I wouldn't call it propaganda. I think this tradition, St. Nicholas and Zwarte Piet, as we call it, is just a symbol of deeper lying problems of anti-black racism and what we also call Afrophobia. What we have on December 5th in Holland is the most popular tradition in Holland. You have this St. Nicholas, the white saint high on his horse, being served by these black servants in a very inferior position, and this tradition symbolizes what has been said, this history of colonialism and slavery, which still affects us up until this day.
But couldn't you say let that happen and let's focus more on the daily life problems? It's once in the year, and so what?
I don't think so. It's not just once a year, because it's an institutional problem. Children are faced with it on schools, on TV, everywhere you go. Between November 16th and December 5th, you're faced with this blackface tradition. And the reason that we criticize it is that racism is a taboo subject, especially in Dutch society, but I think across Western Europe, we tend to think of ourselves as, progressive, tolerant, open, free. But in reality, there is this invisible problem where we often unconsciously still look at people of color and black people in particular in ways that, infringe our human rights.
Malin, during this meeting it was mentioned that even books for children are having a kind of racism. From your country, Sweden, you know about Pippi Langström, where it has been questioned whether it should be this way as it is, indicating some kind of racism or not. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I think that now we are very happy. I'm very happy that the children's stories, very loved ones about Pippi Longström, has been re-edited to do away with Afrophobic expressions that were there from the 60s and 70s. I think we have to challenge tradition, challenge the loved stories when they're not up to the board. And we managed to do that, and they will be re-edited, and I will be very happy now to show them to my little children, which I was hesitating to do. I don't want them to learn these stereotypes. And when you say that, is this really the important battle? Well, it's, as some people said in this seminar, it's the top of the iceberg, but we have to challenge the representations as we challenge also the hate crimes and the violence and the social situation and unemployment figures of black people in Europe. I think, one doesn't exclude the other, but it's clear that when you take the discussion on a very, visible topic like Zwarte Piet or Pippi Longstrump, then people get sometimes very upset. But it also, if people could just sit down and listen, I think we have the responsibility to listen to what the people most concerned say about Afrophobia.
Many black people are now coming, trying to get or find their fortune in our part of the world.
Well, I think so. As I said, we have to see these forms and symbols of racism as reflection of a deeper lying system, economic, political. It's institutional. And the issue of refugees, for example, I have a group of refugees living across me in my street, in my neighborhood, and the reason that they come to Europe is that within their own countries, often they have to flee for poverty, violence, and these structural imbalances on a global scale, which are related to a history of colonialism, slavery, where in the West, in Europe, we had centuries of the extraction of resources and building of power, where other countries, the colonies, were left in a space where they couldn't really grow and develop themselves.
Many people say that we have to take in those who are well educated. You are a well educated man, you have a good civil position. Couldn't you say it's not my problem? What is the reason for your engagement?
I don't think so. I think it's not a matter of being educated or not. It's about human rights. My parents migrated from Suriname, a former Dutch colony, without higher education to Holland to provide better opportunities for me. And because I had these opportunities, I was able to, develop myself, get 2 master's degrees. But what I see and what really strikes me is that often I'm the only, black person in a university or on the labor market in higher positions. And this is related to, the issue we're discussing, Afrophobia, anti-black racism, where you see that across all Western European countries, on the labor market, in education, you see these structural inequalities which are often related to this history of colonialism, but also the way we still unconsciously look at black people, where we discriminate black people, where we exclude black people just because of the color of their skin or their culture. And often it happens in an unconscious way. It's so normalized to have, a tradition as Black Pete, which is obviously racist, but it's so normalized to look at black people in this inferior way that, we just take it as a given.
Malin, what do you expect after such a meeting today? What can the EU actually do?
Well, the EU and the European Parliament in particular is a space for expression and debate, and to actually push the thinking along lines that would be more in my view, democratic, equal, and for greater justice. And I think then addressing racism against black people and Afrophobia is an important part of that. So I hope that this is a starting point. We have heard many scary, but also very convinced people that are struggling in their different contexts to combat this form of racism. Together, I think we can, little by little, construct political action out of that. And we will use the European Parliament, people are using the national level, we will use the European level if possible also, of course.